This is Final Voice TV. Today, we discuss with you what are Africans' sincere expectations of their leaders? What influences a voter's decision in Africa? Is there any need for voter education? This is Final Voice TV. With me here today is Mr. Mitchell Mahachi. We are about to touch this topic and discuss. Is something wrong with the African voter, or the leaders are to blame? Do voters have sincere expectations, or the leaders are just bad? They can't serve their people. Final Voice TV. To join this discussion, what you can do is to leave your comment in the comment section and hit the like button. And kindly subscribe so we can build the audience to discuss some of these things that bother Africa. Issues that affect everyone on this planet. This is Final Voice TV. I'm going for a break. I'll be right back.
Dear viewer, kindly like this video, subscribe, hit the notification bell to receive more.
So, we are back. Welcome to the show, Mr. Mitchell Mahachi.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, this is your own platform, and viewers would like to know what are Africans' sincere expectations of their leaders? Is it that we expect more from our leaders and that they can't perform? Is it the voter who is to blame, or the leader?
Right, thank you, Mr. Charles. It's quite an interesting question, and also very an intriguing question, actually. So the scenario that we actually have with regards to the voting patterns that we actually find in Africa, so we actually have maybe what we would say there are various voters in Africa. As you know, the educational qualifications or status of people in Africa are varied. So we have maybe the enlightened voter, whom we might say is in the urban areas. We also have the voter also we might say is not so enlightened, who's also in the rural areas. So to then look at their sincerity. Definitely when someone is going to vote, they're actually sincere. It's a long process. It starts with you registering to vote and waiting for the actual day and then going to vote. So what we have is sometimes people say that the type of leaders that we have actually is a reflection of the people. Sometimes it's actually said in quite a number of areas. But what we find now in Africa is a situation where we actually have parties that actually came in just after the colonial era. So these sometimes are called the revolutionary parties. And so when the revolutionary parties actually came into power, they had so many promises that they actually promised people. And then they have been in power, some of them, for quite a long time. In a few cases in here and there in Africa, you actually find there have been times where they've actually maybe lost, and other parties then came in, which are now mostly termed the pro-democracy parties. So if we are now just to look at this aspect of the revolutionary parties that have been there, so they have the things that they have promised people, and because they have been in power for quite a long time, it then becomes difficult for them to be held accountable for the things that they promised, which actually probably have not materialized. So if we are to look at them in this aspect, and you ask, so who's bad? Is it the voter, or is it the leader? So it actually is difficult then to apportion the blame to say who is actually bad, because then probably the people feel that these are the people that took us out from the colonial period, and they've been given time probably to make things right, as it were, and probably they are still saying they still need more time. So for them to say, someone who feels that, oh, definitely probably they need more time, because probably for 1, 2, 3 reasons, that's their own perception. You know, we have this free democracy.
So this is what we call voter loyalty.
Yeah, I think
He or she goes to vote because that voter believes this people or these people or this person brought us out of slavery, like
in a way, yeah.
Yeah, some kind of that.
So in that sense, yes. So they have this loyalty. These are the people, you know, who brought us out, and we just actually at one point it was an attempt that there should be a one-party state in most of these regions that we are talking about, where the revolutionary parties came in, and the drive was sort of to have a one-party state, and it actually maybe moved in this way for quite some time. So in the minds of people, it kind of just stuck. We have this party, we are expected to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. But over time, people got discontent, and some other parties started to come in, and they've actually gained ground. There is sometimes they're actually even winning, sometimes the opposition parties.
So we ask a simple question today on Final Voice TV. What are Africans' sincere expectations of their leaders? What influences a voter's decision in Africa? Who is to blame? The politician or the voter? Do we have bad leaders or bad voters? This is Final Voice TV. What else do we learn from this?
Right.
Do people in Africa have sincere expectations, or just that the leaders underperform?
All right. Like maybe I need to come again. This aspect of this sincerity, whether their expectations are sincere, I believe, because the same people that we are talking about, these are the same people that are looking for jobs. These are the same people that are looking for health delivery, for all the services that government can actually provide. And these are the same people that are coming to vote. So when they come to vote, of course, we know there's vote buying, so maybe the sincerity in that aspect can actually be questionable. But when people come to vote, you know, there are billboards, there are posters that our leaders actually put, the political parties put. We actually promise housing for all by whatever time, you know, and all the other services that they actually promise. Electrify the whole country, you know, you find them on the billboards towards the elections. So the voter is coming in under this illusion that, or under this belief that these things that have been promised are definitely this time we are going to get them. So it reminds me of one, this lady from Uganda, this comedian. So she had this joke that she actually had one time, where she comes to the electorate and she's saying, if you vote me into power, I'm going to give you shoes. And everyone is happy that they are going to get shoes. And then she goes on to say, right, but this time we are going to do it differently. So what I will do is today, I'm going to give you one side of the shoe. Then if I come into power, then you get the other side of the shoe. So
amazing.
so the voter then comes in with these expectations. So that's the kind of relationship that we have. And so many times you actually find that, you know, people are actually given other items so that they can vote for various, you know, candidates that are actually going to come in. And this has been the pattern over and over again. So if you can give someone something, so they actually vote against this. Then, but people are actually voting on party lines and not exactly on merit lines. So it is just Charles Opoku from X party, right? And if he's just from X party, so we are going to vote for him.
Once Charles is from this party, it is done.
It is done.
It is sealed.
Whether he knows what he's doing or he doesn't know what he's doing, that is something else. So long he's just from our, so we are going to vote for him. And also from the opposition, whether he knows what he's doing or he doesn't know what he's, we are not going
to vote for him.
So that is the other problem that we actually have. So when you talk of sincerity, I think these are some of the issues that we want to look at.
So what influences a voter's decision in Africa? Do they just go to the polls to choose anyone because they belong to this party or belong to this tribe or ethnic group? or these voters have sincere expectations of their leaders? I'm going for a break. I'll be right back. Yeah, this is Final Voice TV. So we ask again, what should influence a voter's decision in Africa? What should influence the voters when they go to the polls? Should it be you belong to my tribe or you are from my region? Or there should be something influencing these voters to vote for the best in their countries? What comes into mind? What should influence these voters in Africa?
Right. So the thing is, we want to move our countries forward. So the first thing that we actually need is the electorate should be actually targeting towards someone who is a visionary, right? So when we talk about a visionary leader, this is a leader who is not looking at the immediate, time of his tenure. He is actually looking at the next 20, the next 30, the next 50 years, probably even the next 100 years. Where do we see our nation going, right? So we're not immediately just looking at the immediate time that we are getting into power, because then this is where we now talk about we just want to extract oil, we want to extract these minerals. But you should have the long-term focus, and this is what the discerning electorate should actually be targeting. That our leader, what does he say about the environment, right? We have, like, for instance, this COP27 that is coming up, right? What is the direction towards things to do with climate change, to things to do with environment? And we are also talking about things to do with technology, for example. So all these things should be things that a discerning electorate should be actually looking at. So the first thing is the visionary leader. So we have visionary leaders that we have seen, for instance, Kwame Nkrumah, when he was actually there trying to unify Africa. And you look at this person, and then as a voter, you say, this is the person that I want to vote because of the vision that he is driving. So that is the first thing that I believe that we should be looking at as electorate, is the visionary leadership that we should be seeing from the person that is...
So as a voter goes to the polls, his or her expectation, or what he should look for, is who among these has vision or plans for this country or this region.
So it shouldn't be guided by which party, but it's the vision. So everyone is looking at the long term, because all these parties that we talk about, at one point they will not be there, but the people will be there. So if we are governed by just looking at a party and not the vision, then we are actually going to miss the thing. And then so we actually saw this even in the United Arab Emirates. You saw it 1957. They show it was just a desert. 1957. Yeah. And fast forward to today, everyone wants to go to Dubai. But 1957, if you were told to go to Dubai, you were like, to do what? To do what? You see. But now it has been transformed because of the leadership, because of that vision, that someone actually had, that I would want this, I would want this. And just touching a little bit on this vision, they actually have a vision that all this wildlife that we actually have in Africa should actually exist in the United Arab Emirates. So tourists will be actually coming to see all the same giraffes, whatever, within the United Arab Emirates. The elephant, the giraffe. So this is their vision. And they are moving towards this vision, and people are actually going for tourism in the Dubai. So this just touching on this aspect of vision. And then the next thing that we actually think that a visionary, now the visionary should come to the electorate. Yeah. So the next thing that we actually think is the electorate should look at leaders that are compassionate, because as you know that our society is highly polarized, right? So we actually need people. We actually saw this, for instance, in the president that was in Tanzania. He actually had the people at his heart, and he is telling everyone who is in his cabinet, no one is going to use an expensive vehicle like the Mercedes. If you want a Mercedes, you have to buy it yourself. Government will only put fuel in these small cars. That's where government is going to put its fuel. So if you want the big guy, no problem, but you have to buy it yourself. So this is the compassionate that we are actually talking about. This is a leader who, when sick, he is actually treated by his own people. He is treated in the same hospital that you and I are going to be treated.
Leaders in Africa travel abroad to seek health care.
Yes, so this is the thing that we should be actually looking at as the electorate, that we have a leader that feels for us, because then he is also going to improve the facilities because he is using the same facilities.
Won't you become that kind of a leader that wants to see a convoy, about 50 cars following him or her, with some horses beside his car, people running as he's going for a function or a program?
Sorry, come again. I didn't.
As I won't you prefer to become that kind of a leader with about 50 cars behind and in front of him with horses?
You mean if I was a leader?
Not you, but don't you see what is happening now?
This is what we see actually. But I've also seen, very simple leaders. They are also on the train with people. They also get on the bus. I think this is the type of leadership that I actually would want. Someone that I can also interact with at one point or the other, just to see him also on the same train that I am in. So it just gives me this feeling that we are together.
Because all these 50 cars, all these 40 cars in the convoy use free fuel at the expense of the voter.
That's very
the government machinery, the government appointees are being catered for by the taxpayers' money.
So this is the type of leadership that we want, that is compassionate. Because now we have a situation where, say, the inflation goes up so high, and people cannot actually access their pensions because they have actually been eroded by inflation. And we have leaders who are there, and probably in our view, probably they actually maybe stress over it, but in our view we feel like they are not compassionate about this, because then probably their salary or their pension is actually pegged in US dollars. It's actually not being touched in any way. But for the common person who actually worked 20-30 years within government, but your salary, your pension is eroded, and you can't afford just to put food on the table. So this is the compassion that we want in the leaders, that they should feel for the people that are actually contributing for government for the country to develop.
What should influence a voter during polls? What are the sincere expectations of voters? They want visionary leaders, compassionate leaders, leaders with compassion. Not those who come and you have to see about 80 cars in your convoy, plus horses, plus those running, chasing him as he wants to open his door to attend a function or an occasion. Huge government expenditures overburden these countries in Africa. Yet they've not found any antidote
to the people's problems.
To the people's problems, as you mentioned. So what should influence you? If you're a voter, what are the things that you need to look out for before you vote for someone in Africa? Be it Nigeria, Ghana, Uganda, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi, South Africa. What should these voters in these nations think of or think about before they even go to the polls to elect their leaders? I'm going for a break. When I return, Mr. Mitchell Mahachi tells us more about what should influence a voter during elections. So, from the look of things in Africa, there is the need for voter education, because some things should influence a voter to choose a leader.
Yes, definitely.
So what are some of the things to guide these voters to know that this person can really take us to the place that we want to go as a nation? What should influence a voter's decision in Africa?
So one other thing that we actually think that a voter should be looking into is, the rhetoric that we actually get from this leadership should be rhetoric that unifies people, rhetoric that unifies the whole country. Because the whole country, as it were already, in most countries, you actually find that the politics is actually polarized. So it is polarized according to your tribe. It is polarized according to your education. And this is actually not working in favor of the continent. So what we want is a leader who then brings everyone on the table. So whether you are educated, you are not educated, you are from which tribe, you are from which tribe. Because as it were, you look from, I just noticed just now the preparations for elections, say in Nigeria, for instance. So we have people talk about the south, people talk about the north, and then the voting line is along those lines, whether it's north, whether it's south.
Yeah, you have one strong candidate coming from the southeastern part of Nigeria, and others are from the central and the northern part of Nigeria.
And this is going to perpetuate the status quo, where one region probably is less developed than the other. But what we actually want is a situation where the leader comes and he is actually, talking about unifying the whole nation, and then we actually move forward. We have seen this in other countries. We saw it in Malaysia, we saw it in Singapore. People actually came together, the people in diaspora put their hands together, and the country is actually working. And this is what we actually need, in Africa. We have people in diaspora. These people need to be brought in tandem with what's happening in the country. They should not be treated like people who are actually like not maybe supporting the government or something like this. They should actually, so this is something that we want in the leaders. They should have this vision and this unifying effect amongst the people. And then we can definitely move forward.
So what should influence the voters' decision during elections in Africa? We look at countries like Ghana, Nigeria, Togo, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Mali, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt. If you're a voter and you go to the polls, your decision should be based on what as a voter? These are the things that we are discussing today on Final Voice TV. You can join us. Leave a comment in the comment section, like this video and share, and kindly subscribe. Let's have that audience to discuss these things that bother Africa. We're looking for the success of Mother Africa and the world. So what should influence a voter during elections in Africa?
Another thing that we should actually be looking into is the issue of accountability. So we have situations where we have some leadership that have come and they've represented various parties or probably themselves, and they actually went into power. And we actually had some situations where just one individual puts as much as $5 billion US in a Swiss account. And that person actually remains in power and probably is actually even vying for another 5-year term. So this accountability actually is something that we should also look into in our leadership. And our leadership should actually be open to evaluation. What they've done in the past 5 years. They talk about in the public sector about results-based management. So what were the results? And they actually then come and give feedback to their electorate. We have done so much, we have done so much. But what we actually find now is a situation where, members of parliament, you only see them twice. You see them on the day of their inauguration, and then you see them also on the day for the campaign. But in between, you actually do not see them. What exactly are they doing? So they should be coming to report to their electorate. We have managed to do this money came and we did this, just relating to the electorate so that the electorate actually feel that there is something that is actually going on. And not the situation where we find there's no accountability.
Yeah, but this is a case for the very elite class. They think about probity and accountability. The very person those in the villages or the smaller towns, all they care is that you belong to our tribe or our ethnic group.
But this is what we are saying, that they should actually look, because even in the rural area, if you do not have a bus, because there is no road that comes to your place, and there is actually someone who is representing you who failed to do this, yet they promised that they were going to do it in the past election. And this is now the time that we are saying, okay, what is the result from last time? And you have to relate to the electorate. The electorate evaluate what you are saying. Does it really make sense? What were the hindrances, the challenges, that probably made you to fail to deliver on the promise? So if the electorate then decides that this, it's within grounds that, okay, fine, it is understandable. But if it is not understandable, then the electorate should actually make that decision based on the accountability that they see. So this is what we say, they should actually look into this accountability. So you think there's the need for voter education? Yes, definitely people should actually understand the role that these policymakers actually is, right? And when people understand what actually they should do, and they then can come to a point where they can evaluate amongst themselves. When the guy, this parliamentarian or whoever comes to then sort of seek votes again, they have their list, right? You promised to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Where are we with these 10, right? And then the parliamentarian is going to report, from the 10, please, I only managed to do 2. So 2 out of 10, the electorate now is going to decide, is 2 out of 10 acceptable? Or is 2 out of 10 not acceptable? So if 2 out of 10 is not acceptable, they know what to do. All right. Final Voice TV, you can join this discussion by leaving a comment in the comment section, like this video, and kindly subscribe. Let's have that audience to discuss some of these topics that will benefit Africa and the world. What should influence a voter during elections? Africa in perspective. I'm going for a break. I'll be right back. Final Voice TV, we ask a simple question. What should influence a voter during elections? What should influence a voter's decision in Africa? Africa in perspective. What should we add to the points raised so far? Right. We also think that, the electorate should also be looking at leaders that are exemplary, right? So what sort of a lifestyle, the leaders actually sort of lead. So, for instance, we talk about cutting government expenditure, and this should actually also be reflected by their also, their lifestyle as well. Because then we can't have government expenditure being cut, and yet there's a lavish, sort of lifestyle. We go back a little bit into history. I think we've read about the French Revolution. So at a point where everyone else is really suffering from famine, there was no food on many people's table. But at this particular time, people read in the newspaper that the king is actually feeding a lot of horses with better food than they are actually eating in their home. They also read that the queen is actually having million pairs of shoes, when many people are actually going without shoes. So this kind of life is not exemplary to the situation that everyone else is going through. So the lifestyle that leaders lead should actually be exemplary in a way, and people should actually look at this. Is it exemplary the way that they, conduct themselves? Is it before he being elected as a leader, or as he's in office, or she's in office? It's actually, because when they come into office, they prefer the convoy, the horses, the people who will be running to open their doors during occasions. That is the leaders that we see so far in Africa. So this is actually something that we should interrogate, right? Because probably maybe it might be the way I see it, maybe, and people actually see it in a different way. But what I think I do agree with you is that exemplary lifestyle should be seen even as you are in opposition. Exactly. We are saying whether you are opposition, whether you are ruling party, the story is we should be looking at your exemplary way of life. So if the opposition is also doing it, then the opposition should also be wrong. So if it is being done in the ruling party, then they are also wrong. Because then it shouldn't be sort of like selective to say, okay, it's only for those that are in the ruling party, this criticism. It should also be, targeted even at those that are in the opposition. So people also look at the leadership that we have in the opposition. What sort of leadership do we have? Is it exemplary in the way that they conduct themselves? So that should actually form the basis that we actually then use to evaluate them. We look at their self-sacrifice. What exactly are they doing? So this is something that I think that voters should actually be looking at.
Yeah. So what else do we talk about?
And I think the most important thing for me is actually that we touch this issue of the vision. And it is also tied with the same point that I want to make, that there should actually be a respect for the rule of law. So if I am actually going to be a leader, I should actually need to respect the laws that govern my country. And these laws are actually coming from the same people that I seek to represent, because they are the ones that voted in that constitution through a referendum. So if the people have actually said that, for example, the term should be 2 terms at the most, let me respect that. This is what people said. If people want another referendum that says, no, 2 terms is not enough because we see that there is 1, 2, 3, 4 things that are left behind, so be it. But as it actually stands, the constitution should run its term. And the leader should be someone that then respects this. And during this time that they are also respecting this, maybe it might be difficult to see if someone actually hasn't been in power. But, well, we have those that have been in power. So if we see that they are also not respecting this rule of law, let's give chance to those that might come, maybe they might, or something like this. I think this is the kind of checks and balance. So when we actually look at this respect of the rule of law, the next thing should be building institutions, right, that are actually independent. So currently what we have in many other countries is like the executive powers. So the executive powers kind of give, the incumbent so many powers to probably maybe dictate what actually they prefer. Whereas if the independent, for instance, if there is independent judiciary, it does whatever it does. There is an independent electoral system, even the military, whatever institution that is actually there is actually strengthened so that it then makes its own independent decision, regardless of I as the leader.
Yeah, and I asked this question. Do you think we should revisit this era where Africans or nations in Africa had prime ministers and not presidents? Therefore, we can have some kind of a jury or a council as the head of the country and the prime minister.
Okay. The issue of prime minister, president, actually probably boils down to what the constitution actually says. Because it could be just terminology that we have this. Is it ceremonial to have the prime minister as just there wearing his tie as just a figurehead? Or he actually has whatever powers that so it comes back to what does the constitution actually say? So
so someone could be a prime minister but with so much powers.
Yes, it's possible. Because you might find, for instance, you have a system like this in Israel. So the prime minister is the one that actually has most of the power. And then they also have probably a president, but I'd need to confirm, but I remember reading something like this at one point, that they have a president, but you don't so much hear about the president.
Just like the case of Germany with the chancellor, but they also have a president. But you always hear the name of the chancellor.
Yes, so he's the one who is mostly active in terms of, administration. So it then comes back to what exactly does our constitution say. So the issue that I want to make is this issue of executive powers, because this is the problem where it actually probably comes to. That if the executive powers then are that you can appoint the people who are in the judiciary, you can appoint the people who are in the electoral system, you can appoint those that are in the military. I think this is where, you know, even in checks and balances, I think this actually needs to be addressed. Or probably the electorate again come to their constitution. If they agree with these executive powers, so who am I?
Yeah. So going for a break, I'll be right back. You can join this discussion by leaving your comment in the comment section. Kindly hit the like button and subscribe. Let's have that audience on Final Voice TV. I'll be right back. So we are back on Final Voice TV. We're talking about the voters and leaders of Africa. Is it the voter who is to blame, or we are to blame leaders of Africa? What do voters expect of their leaders, of these politicians in Africa? What should influence a voter's decision during elections in Africa? We are about to end the show, but I want to ask Mr. Mitchell Mahachi a simple question, and we wrap up and end the show here. Has democracy disappointed Africa? Hence, the military taking over. I take it again. Has democracy disappointed Africa? Hence, the military taking over.
Right. That is a very tricky but a very pertinent question also. So, yes, definitely we have seen a number of coups that have happened. I think recently we also had another one in Burkina Faso happening within 4 months, I think, of the previous one.
About 8 months.
8 months of the previous one. So that points to a big challenge. And so what we actually want to do then is to unpack this aspect of democracy. So the concept of democracy actually has its origins at another point in the involvement of the African landscape, political landscape. So what we have is a situation at one point we actually have colonial rule. And we have colonial rule starting from as early as the 1800s and something, maybe, for instance, I know in Zimbabwe, 1891, thereabout, from 1891 coming up until we then get our independence from around 1950, right? So during this time, we have the colonial era. They had their own type of administration that they're actually using, which we might say in our view was not democratic to us, because we were not party to whatever was actually going on. We have very repressive laws that were done there. For instance, there was the cattle tax that, you know, was given to people in other countries. So when we look at this to 1958, so 1957, that's the first African country, right?
Yeah.
Getting independence.
Yeah.
So from
first country in sub-Saharan Africa.
Right. So we then come from 1957 going up, right? So we have the new parties coming in, mostly the revolutionary parties, MPLA, I don't know the other ones, you know, in the other countries. This MPLA, and then, so from this time that we are talking about, we have these revolutionary parties coming in. And they ushered in, they tried in a variety of, you know, types of government. Sometimes they tried the socialist, capitalist, you know, they were just trying to see what would really help the people. Right. But then there are also other things that are intervening in the midst of all these attempts. So then we then come to a point where people are disillusioned because of, you know, the lack of progress. And this could actually be even attributed to drop in prices. Sometimes people were relying on oil. The prices took a dip, you know, and this actually affected the economies of various countries. And then the food prices went up at one point, you know, and people begin to feel disillusioned by this, right? And because there was kind of one-party state then came this new principle of democracy that actually then is ushered in. So if you look at democracy, since we started 1957, and then this disillusionment probably, we might say, after 20 years, That takes us to around maybe almost 1980. So from 1980, if we are to talk about the democratic parties, I think most of them actually start around 1990s going onwards.
Exactly.
So if we now take 1990 as the baseline, and then 1990 to 2000, so almost 30 years of trying to have democratic parties also, coming into the political landscape. So if we look at this now, and then we also want to answer another question, which actually has not been answered. And this question is actually, what is best for Africa? Right. So this question actually, people have actually tried, but not really come to a satisfactory answer. And until we actually get an answer for this, we are always going to have challenges. So the question for me is this. It's a very simple question. So which is better, to have a full stomach but not possess anything, or to possess something but have an empty stomach?
So, come again on this, your proverbial thing. Which is better, to do what?
Which is better, to have a full stomach but not own the means of production, right? Or to own the means of production but have an empty stomach? So this is the scenario that we find ourselves in Africa. So we have means of, we have the resources. So if we have to come to a point where we own these resources, there are challenges in terms of investment, etc., etc. And these challenges actually affect then the running of the economy at a point. And it will actually cause people to have empty stomachs in a way. I just put empty in quotes.
Yeah.
Right. Or we could actually have the economy in the hands of other people, right? And everything is moving fine, but you are not in control of the means of production.
Yeah.
So this is the question that we actually need to answer in Africa. Then we can then talk about this democracy that we want to talk about. As long as this question is not answered, we have these two scenarios where we have external influence and we actually have the internal problems that we actually have. And then if this is actually not looked into, we'll continue to have these coups that we are talking about.
So we should define the Africa we want, and that will guide us as to what kind of governance
that we expect,
that we need or expect. And this issue of which will, I mean, your proverb or your statement takes me back to South Africa. And I read a story about South Africa, and Indians in South Africa even own more lands than South Africans.
The indigenous South Africans.
Yeah, so there is a nation called South Africa, but if you go there, foreigners own more lands or assets than the very people in that country. Is that the Africa we want? So let's define the Africa we want. Let's state the kind of Africa we want. That will guide us to determine what kind of governance we want in the 21st century and beyond. This is Final Voice TV. This is where we end today's show. You can also add something to our discussion by leaving your comment in the comment section. Kindly like this video, share this video, and subscribe if you're new to this channel. Let's have that audience to discuss similar topics like this to benefit Africa and the world at large. Thank you for watching.